I need you to tell me exactly what you've been saying about my son." The words came out steadier than I expected, considering my hands were shaking inside the pockets of my jacket. Nicole Whitmore froze mid-step in the school parking lot, her perfectly manicured hand hovering over her car door handle. For just a second, maybe half a second, her smile faltered. Then it snapped back into place like a mask secured with invisible wire. "Sarah," she said, tilting her head with practiced concern, "I don't know what you're talking about. Is everything okay?" 3 other mothers were loading kids into minivans nearby. I saw them pause, glance over, pretend they weren't listening. In a place like Riverside Elementary, a confrontation in the parking lot was better than cable television. I didn't care. I was done being quiet. "You've been telling people you're concerned about Jackson," I said, my voice low but firm. "Concerned about his development, his behavior, his social skills. You've been planting doubts in every conversation, haven't you?" Nicole's eyes widened, all wounded innocence. "Sarah, if I mentioned something, it was only because I care. We all want what's best for our kids." "Stop." I took a step closer. She actually stepped back, which felt like a small, bitter victory. "I talked to his teacher. I talked to the school counselor. Jackson is doing great. There's nothing wrong with him. So where exactly are these concerns coming from?" Her jaw tightened for just a fraction of a second before the smile returned, softer now, almost pitying. "Honey, I think you might be overreacting. Maybe the stress of the move, settling into a new place, it can make us a little sensitive. I never said anything bad about Jackson. I love that little guy." She was good. She was so, so good. The tone, the body language, the slight suggestion that I was unstable, that I was imagining things. If I hadn't spent the last 2 weeks piecing together exactly what she'd been doing, I might have believed her myself. I might have apologized, backed down, gone home feeling crazy and ashamed. But I had receipts now, and I wasn't alone anymore. "How many others, Nicole?" I asked quietly. "How many other mothers have you done this to?" Her face went still. Not blank, calculated, like she was running through responses in her head, testing which one would work best. The mothers loading their cars had stopped even pretending not to watch now. "I think you need to take a step back and think about what you're accusing me of," Nicole said, voice cooling by degrees. "I've been part of this school community for 6 years. I've organized fundraisers, coordinated events, supported families through hard times. If you're upset about something, that's valid. But coming at me in a parking lot with wild accusations? That's not how we handle things here." There it was, the subtle threat wrapped in reasonable language. The reminder that she had history, credibility, power, and I was just the new mom who'd been here 3 months, the outsider making a scene. I should have been intimidated. 3 months ago, I would have been. But 2 days ago, I'd sat in a coffee shop 20 miles away with 4 other women who'd heard those exact same words, who'd been isolated, gaslit, and nearly driven out of this school by the woman standing in front of me with her concerned smile and her carefully crafted reputation. "You're right," I said, surprising her. "This isn't how we should handle things. So let's handle it properly. I think we should have a conversation with Principal Hayes. You, me, and anyone else who might have insights into these concerns you've been sharing." Her smile finally cracked. Just a little. Just enough. "I don't have time for this," she said, yanking open her car door. "I have a meeting." She got in and drove away faster than necessary, tires squealing slightly on the asphalt. I stood there in the parking lot, heart hammering, adrenaline making my vision sharp and bright. The other mothers quickly finished loading their kids and left without making eye contact. I didn't blame them. I understood now. I understood exactly how Nicole had built her little kingdom of fear. But understanding it and stopping it were 2 very different things. 3 months ago, I'd arrived at Riverside with nothing but hope and a desperate wish that my 7-year-old son would make friends, that we'd find community, that this move would be good for our family. I'd walked into that first parent orientation nervous and eager, clutching my coffee like a security blanket, smiling too much at everyone. Nicole had spotted me immediately. "New family?" she'd asked, appearing at my side with a warm smile and eyes that scanned me from head to toe in one efficient sweep. "I'm Nicole Whitmore. My daughter Olivia is in 2nd grade. Welcome to Riverside. We're like a big family here." She'd linked her arm through mine like we were old friends and guided me through the crowd, introducing me to what felt like 50 people whose names I immediately forgot. She'd added me to 3 different WhatsApp groups before the orientation even ended. That night, my phone had buzzed with welcome messages, event invitations, offers for playdates. "You're so lucky," my husband Mark had said, watching me scroll through the messages. "Usually it takes forever to break into these suburban parent groups. You've got an instant in." He'd been right. Or so I'd thought. The first 2 weeks were a whirlwind of coffee dates, park meetups, and after-school playdates. Nicole was always there, always organizing, always at the center. She knew everyone's schedule, everyone's kids, everyone's business. She introduced me as my new friend Sarah with such genuine warmth that I'd felt grateful, included, safe. Jackson had made friends with Olivia and 2 other kids from his class. He'd come home chattering about recess and art projects and how much he loved his new school. After months of worry about uprooting him from everything familiar, watching him thrive felt like the universe finally giving us a break. Then, slowly, things started to shift. It began with small comments from Nicole, always delivered with a furrowed brow and a gentle touch on my arm. I noticed Jackson seemed a little overwhelmed at the playground yesterday. Is he usually sensitive to loud environments? Or, Olivia mentioned Jackson didn't want to share the blocks during playdate. Is he going through a phase? I'd brushed it off as genuine observation. Nicole had been a mom in this community for years. Maybe she was noticing things I'd missed. Maybe Jackson was struggling with the transition more than I'd realized. I'd started watching him more carefully, second-guessing normal 7-year-old behavior, wondering if I was missing signs of some deeper issue. By week 4, the invitations started drying up. Playdates got canceled with vague excuses. "Olivia's not feeling well. We have family plans. Maybe another time." The WhatsApp groups I'd been added to went quiet whenever I posted something. My messages would sit there, unacknowledged, while conversations flowed around them. I'd told myself I was being paranoid. New mom anxiety, imposter syndrome in an unfamiliar social landscape. Then came the birthday party. Olivia's 8th birthday party was apparently the social event of the semester. I'd heard about it in the group chat for weeks, the theme, the venue, the elaborate cake Nicole had ordered. Every kid in the 2nd grade class was invited, every single one, except Jackson. He'd come home from school quiet, clutching an invitation to a classmate's party the same weekend. "Is Olivia having a party too?" he'd asked carefully. "Mason said everyone's going." My heart had cracked right down the middle. "I'm not sure, buddy. Maybe it's a small family thing." But it wasn't. I'd seen the photos all over social media. 30 kids running around a rented play space, parents gathered in clusters, Nicole in the center of it all with her camera-ready smile. My son was the only one who hadn't been invited. When I'd gently asked Nicole about it a few days later, she'd looked genuinely confused. "Oh my God, Sarah, I'm so sorry. I must have miscounted the invitations. You know how chaotic party planning gets. I feel terrible. Jackson must have been so disappointed." She'd sounded sincere, looked sincere, but something in my gut had twisted anyway. The following week, 2 different mothers had canceled playdates within an hour of confirming them. A mom I'd started becoming friendly with suddenly stopped responding to my texts. At pickup, conversations would halt when I approached, then resume in lower voices once I'd passed. I'd started to feel like I was losing my mind. Had I done something wrong? Said something offensive? Was there some suburban social code I hadn't learned yet? Mark had tried to reassure me. "Maybe you're reading too much into it. These women probably have complicated social dynamics that existed long before you got here. Just give it time." But time made it worse. By the end of month 2, Jackson had stopped getting invited to weekend activities. He'd started coming home quieter, spending more time in his room. One night I'd found him crying into his pillow, and when I'd asked what was wrong, he'd said, "Why doesn't anyone like me here?" I'd held him and promised that wasn't true, that he was wonderful and people just needed time to get to know him. But inside, I'd been screaming. Because I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I didn't know what I'd done to make an entire community turn away from my child. Then 2 weeks ago, something shifted. I'd been sitting in my car after pickup, crying quietly where Jackson wouldn't see, when someone knocked on my window. I'd looked up to find a woman I vaguely recognized from orientation, Linda Chen, mother of a 4th grader. I'd rolled down the window, hastily wiping my eyes. "Are you okay?" she'd asked. "Fine," I'd lied. "Just a long day." She'd studied me for a moment, then said quietly, "Is it Nicole?" My breath had caught. "What?" Linda had glanced around the parking lot, then leaned closer. "Nicole Whitmore. Is she the reason you're crying?" I'd stared at her, unable to form words. Linda had pulled out her phone, quickly typed something, and showed me the screen. It was a message. "Can we talk? Somewhere private, not here." We'd met at a coffee shop 2 towns over the next morning. Linda had arrived with another woman, Jasmine Rodriguez, whose daughter was in 3rd grade. They'd sat across from me in the back corner booth, and Linda had said, "Tell us what happened. Everything." So I had. I'd told them about the comments, the canceled play dates, the isolation, the birthday party, Jackson's tears. I'd told them I felt insane, that I didn't know what I'd done wrong, that I was starting to think we should just leave and start over somewhere else. When I'd finished, Linda and Jasmine had exchanged a look. Then Linda had pulled out her phone. "I'm going to show you something," she'd said. "These are messages Nicole sent me last year." She'd scrolled to a thread from November. Message after message from Nicole, all starting with the same phrase, "I'm just concerned." Concerned about Linda's daughter Emma's social development. Concerned about her academic struggles. Concerned about behavioral issues at school. "The thing is," Linda had said, "Emma wasn't struggling. She was thriving. Straight A's, tons of friends, happy. But after Nicole started these concerns, other mothers pulled back. Playdates stopped. Party invitations dried up. Emma started asking me what she'd done wrong. My hands had started shaking. What did you do?" "I almost pulled her out of the school," Linda had admitted. "I thought maybe there was something wrong with her that I wasn't seeing." Nicole kept suggesting specialists, therapists, evaluations. She was so concerned, so helpful. It took me months to realize she'd made it all up. "Why?" I'd whispered. Jasmine had leaned forward. "Because Emma got the lead in the school play. Nicole's daughter auditioned for the same role and didn't get it." The words had hung in the air like smoke. I'd looked between them, trying to process. "She destroyed your daughter's social life because of a school play?" "Not just the play," Linda had said. "That was just the trigger. Nicole does this to any mother or child who threatens her position. She's the queen bee of Riverside, and she protects that status viciously. The weapon she uses is concern, worry. She frames it as caring, so anyone who calls her out looks paranoid or ungrateful." "She did it to me, too," Jasmine had added. "When my daughter won the science fair, suddenly Nicole was concerned about Sophia's study habits, her stress levels, whether we were pushing her too hard. Other parents started looking at us differently, like we were those pushy parents who damaged their kid for achievement." I'd felt like the ground was tilting under me. "How many others?" "At least 3 more that we know of," Linda had said. "That's why I approached you. I recognize the look on your face. I've been there. We've all been there." She'd pulled out a small notebook and written down 2 names and phone numbers. "Call them. Ask them about Nicole. Then, if you want to do something about this, call me back, because I'm done watching her do this to people." I'd called them that afternoon. Both women had stories that mirrored mine almost exactly. The pattern was undeniable. Nicole identified mothers or children who might draw attention away from her or her daughter. She befriended them first, gathered information, built trust. Then she slowly poisoned the well with carefully planted concerns, always framed as worry, always deniable. The targets found themselves isolated, doubted, gaslit into questioning their own perception of reality. Most eventually left the school or withdrew into themselves. Nicole remained at the center, sympathetic and concerned, her position secure. 5 women over 3 years. 5 families nearly destroyed by one person's need for control. "We need to expose her," I'd said on our second meeting. All 5 of us crammed into Linda's living room. "We need people to see the pattern." "She'll deny everything," Jasmine had warned. "She'll say we're bitter, jealous, making it up. She's been here 6 years. She's organized half the fundraisers, runs the parent association, has the principal's personal cell number. We're nobodies compared to her credibility." "Then we don't just tell people," I'd said. "We show them. We document everything, messages, dates, witnesses. We present it in a way that's undeniable." That's when we'd started planning. That's when we'd become not just victims, but investigators. And that's when I decided to confront Nicole in the parking lot, to let her know I wasn't going to disappear quietly. Now, sitting in my car after she'd driven away, I pulled out my phone and sent a message to the group. "She knows something's coming. We need to move faster." Linda's response came immediately. "Parent meeting is next week. Everyone will be there. It's our shot." My hands were still shaking, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was anticipation. Nicole Whitmore had built an empire on whispered concerns and manufactured doubt. She'd ruled through subtle cruelty and strategic isolation. She'd made one critical mistake, though. She'd assumed her victims would stay silent. She'd counted on shame and confusion keeping us separated. She didn't expect us to compare notes. The next 6 days were a careful choreography of secret meetings and evidence gathering. We met in living rooms, coffee shops, parking lots, anywhere Nicole wouldn't see us together. Each woman brought everything she had: screenshots of messages, emails, calendars marking when invitations stopped, notes from conversations with teachers and counselors proving the concerns were fabricated. Melissa Park, whose son had been targeted 2 years ago after winning a regional math competition, had kept a detailed journal. She'd documented every interaction with Nicole, every planted seed of doubt, every social consequence. "I thought I was being paranoid," she'd said, showing us pages and pages of careful notes. "I thought if I wrote it down, I'd see I was overreacting. Instead, I saw the pattern." The pattern was damning. Nicole's method was consistent across all 5 cases. Identify the threat, befriend them, gather intelligence, then deploy concerns in carefully chosen conversations with influential mothers. She never said anything directly accusatory, always worried observations, gentle suggestions, motherly concern. But the effect was always the same: isolation, doubt, social destruction. "She's careful about who she targets," Rachel Wu pointed out. Rachel's daughter had been ostracized after being selected for a gifted program that Nicole's daughter hadn't qualified for. "She picks mothers who are new, who don't have established support networks yet, who are still finding their footing. We're vulnerable, easy to isolate." "And she never leaves evidence," Jasmine added. "Most of her damage is done in person, in casual conversations. The messages are vague enough to be deniable." "I'm just concerned." "Have you noticed? Maybe you should look into. Nothing you could take to the principal and say, 'Look, she's destroying us.'" That's why we needed the parent meeting, the quarterly General Assembly where the entire school community gathered: parents, teachers, administrators. Nicole always presented at these meetings, updating everyone on parent association activities, fundraising goals, upcoming events. She loved the spotlight, the applause, the visible confirmation of her importance. This time, that spotlight was going to burn. "We can't just stand up and accuse her," Linda said as we planned. "We need to be strategic, calm. We present facts, not emotions. We show the pattern in a way that can't be dismissed as personal drama." We rehearsed. Each woman would share her experience briefly and clearly: the timeline, the false concerns, the social consequences, the lack of any actual problems with their children. We'd show the identical language Nicole used across different cases. We'd present teacher statements confirming the children were fine. We'd make it impossible to dismiss as coincidence or misunderstanding. "She's going to fight back," Melissa warned. "She'll try to paint us as bitter or vindictive. She'll say we're teaming up to attack her because we're jealous or excluded or whatever narrative fits. Let her try, I said. We're not attacking her character. We're documenting her behavior. There's a difference. The night before the meeting, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to Mark, who'd been supportive but worried. Are you sure about this? He'd asked. Going public is going to be intense. There's going to be fallout. There's already fallout, I'd said. Our son is miserable. 5 other families have been through hell. How much worse can it get? He'd squeezed my hand. Okay, then I'm with you, whatever happens. At 6:30 the next evening, I walked into the Riverside Elementary Auditorium with Jackson in tow. The room was already filling up, parents settling into rows of chairs, kids running around the perimeter, teachers clustered near the stage. I spotted Nicole immediately. She was at the front, organizing papers on the podium, laughing with Principal Hayes about something. She saw me enter and her smile flickered, just for a second. Then she turned back to the principal as if I didn't exist. Linda, Jasmine, Melissa, and Rachel filtered in separately, sitting in different sections so we wouldn't look coordinated. We'd agreed, let Nicole do her presentation first. Let her feel comfortable, in control. Then we'd speak. The meeting started with Principal Hayes welcoming everyone and going through routine updates, upcoming testing schedules, facility improvements, budget discussions. Then she introduced Nicole to present the Parent Association report. Nicole took the podium with practiced confidence. She was good at this, warm, articulate, hitting just the right notes of community pride and gentle humor. She talked about successful fundraisers, upcoming events, volunteer opportunities. Parents nodded along, some taking notes, most just happy to have someone else handling the organizational burden. I watched her command the room and understood, maybe for the first time, why she fought so hard to maintain this position. This was her identity. This was where she mattered. And anyone who threatened that, even inadvertently, even innocently, became a problem to be eliminated. When she finished, the applause was genuine and warm. She smiled, looking around the room with satisfaction. Principal Hayes asked if there were any questions or comments. I raised my hand. Nicole's eyes locked onto mine. I watched her calculate, trying to figure out what I might say, how she could control it. Yes, Sarah, Principal Hayes said, recognizing me. I stood up, heart hammering but voice steady. Thank you, Nicole, for that update. I actually have something I'd like to address with the group. It's about parent communication and community dynamics. Nicole's smile stayed in place, but her shoulders tensed. Of course, she said carefully. What's on your mind? I walked to the center aisle, phone in hand. Over the past few months, I've experienced something confusing. Despite my family being welcomed initially, my son has been gradually excluded from social activities and play dates. When I investigated why, I kept hearing the same phrase, that there were concerns about my son's behavior or development. The thing is, his teachers have no such concerns. His counselor has no such concerns. These concerns seem to exist only in parent conversations. The room had gone quiet. Parents were looking at each other, at Nicole, at me. I started asking around, I continued, and I discovered something troubling. I'm not the only mother who's experienced this pattern. In fact, I'd like to ask 4 other mothers to join me up here: Linda Chen, Jasmine Rodriguez, Melissa Park, and Rachel Wu. Would you mind? They stood and came forward, faces serious. I saw confusion rippling through the audience. Principal Hayes was frowning, trying to understand where this was going. Nicole's face had gone carefully blank. Each of us is going to share a brief timeline, I said. I think you'll notice a pattern. Linda went first. She described her daughter's success in the school play, followed by Nicole's sudden concerns about Emma's social development. She showed screenshots of messages on her phone, the ones where Nicole suggested therapy, evaluations, specialists for problems that didn't exist. Jasmine followed, telling the story of Sophia's science fair win and the subsequent concerns about academic pressure and stress. She had emails from teachers confirming Sophia was thriving, juxtaposed with Nicole's worried texts to other mothers. Melissa shared how her son's math competition victory preceded months of Nicole questioning his maturity, his social skills, his ability to handle pressure. She read from her journal, dated entries showing the precise timeline of isolation. Rachel described the gifted program placement and the immediate flood of concerns about pushing her daughter too hard, about perfectionism, about whether Hannah was really ready for advanced curriculum. She had a letter from the program coordinator praising Hannah's adjustment. When they finished, I held up my phone. These are messages Nicole sent about my son Jackson in the past 2 months. I'm going to read them out loud. I read them slowly, letting each one sink in. I'm just concerned about Jackson's social adjustment. Have you noticed Jackson seems a little behind developmentally? I worry about Jackson's ability to keep up with the class. Then I showed the response from his teacher, sent yesterday when I'd asked for a formal assessment. Jackson is performing above grade level academically and socially. He's a delightful, well-adjusted child with strong peer relationships. I have zero concerns about his development. The silence in the auditorium was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop. The concerning thing, I said quietly, is that all 5 of us have nearly identical messages, the same language, the same false worries, the same pattern. Our children excelled or gained attention in some way, and suddenly there were concerns. Concerns that didn't exist with teachers. Concerns that didn't exist with counselors. Concerns that only existed in conversations Nicole had with other parents. I looked directly at Nicole. Her face was white. I'm not saying this to attack anyone, I continued. I'm saying this because parents need to know that sometimes the concerns we hear aren't based on observation or facts. Sometimes they're based on other motivations, and when we act on false information, innocent kids get hurt. Principal Hayes stood up, her expression troubled. Mrs. Whitmore, do you have a response to these allegations? Nicole's mouth opened, closed. For the first time, I saw her completely off balance. I've always tried to support the children in this community. If I've expressed concern, it's because I genuinely worried about their well-being. I didn't mean to. Can you explain why your concerns don't match any teacher assessments? Principal Hayes asked. Or why they seem to correlate specifically with moments when these children or mothers gained attention or recognition? Nicole looked around the room, and I saw it happening. Saw other parents putting pieces together, remembering conversations, looking at their own experiences through a new lens. She did that about my daughter, too, a voice called from the back. I turned to see Christine Maxwell standing. After Ava got Student of the Month, Nicole started asking me if Ava was handling the pressure okay, if maybe she needed to step back from activities. I thought she was being helpful. Another mother stood. She told me she was worried about my son's aggression after he got in a minor argument at recess. But when I talked to the teacher, she said it was completely normal kid conflict, not a pattern. More voices, more stories. Once the dam broke, the flood was unstoppable. Mother after mother describing small comments, gentle concerns, worried questions that had made them doubt their children, their parenting, themselves. Nicole stood at the podium, watching her kingdom crumble. She tried to speak several times, but the mounting testimonies drowned her out. Finally, she grabbed her bag and walked out, heels clicking against the linoleum, back rigid with fury or shame or both. The room erupted in conversation. Principal Hayes called for order, promised a full review of parent communication protocols, suggested forming a committee to address community dynamics. But I barely heard her. I felt Linda's hand on my shoulder, Jasmine's squeeze of my arm. We'd done it. We'd spoken up. We'd shown the pattern. We'd stopped her. 4 months later, I sat at a corner table in the school cafeteria for the monthly parent coffee hour. It was a new initiative, started after what everyone now called simply the meeting. The idea was to create more transparent, inclusive parent communication, open forums where concerns could be raised directly with teachers and administrators present, not whispered through social networks. Jackson was thriving. His calendar was full of play dates, birthday parties, soccer practice. He'd joined the art club and made 3 best friends. Every day he came home chattering about school, happy and confident and secure. Nicole no longer attended school events. She'd resigned from the parent association the week after the meeting. I'd seen her exactly once, at pickup, and we'd made eye contact across the parking lot. She'd looked away first. I didn't feel victorious about that. I felt sad that someone had been so insecure, so desperate for importance, that she'd hurt children to maintain her position. Sad that it had gone on for so long because parents were afraid to speak up, afraid they'd be labeled dramatic or difficult. But I also felt hopeful. The 5 of us, Linda, Jasmine, Melissa, Rachel, and I, had become genuine friends. We met weekly, supported each other, kept an eye out for any parents who seemed isolated or struggling. We'd become what Nicole had pretended to be, an actual support network. Last week, a new family had moved to town. I'd spotted the mother at orientation, holding her coffee cup with white knuckles, smiling too eagerly, obviously nervous. I'd walked over and introduced myself. "First day is overwhelming, isn't it? I'm Sarah. My son's in 2nd grade. Want me to show you around?" She'd looked so relieved she'd almost cried. "That would be amazing. I'm Amy. My daughter's starting 3rd grade, and I'm terrified we won't fit in." "You'll fit in," I'd promised. "And if anyone ever makes you feel like you don't, come find me. We've got your back." Because that was the real lesson I'd learned from Nicole Whitmore. Community wasn't about control. It wasn't about being at the center, being the most important, being irreplaceable. Community was about connection. Real, honest, vulnerable connection where people felt safe to be themselves, to struggle, to succeed, to ask for help. Nicole had built a throne on fear and false concern. She'd ruled through manipulation and isolation, convinced that power came from controlling information and relationships. She'd been wrong. Power, real power, came from showing up honestly, from speaking truth even when your voice shook, from reaching out to others instead of tearing them down, from building up instead of breaking apart. That's what we'd done, 5 mothers who'd been targeted, isolated, and nearly broken. We'd found each other, trusted each other, and together we'd dismantled a system of cruelty that had operated in plain sight for years. And now we made sure no other mother, no other child, would ever have to experience that particular brand of poison disguised as concern. Last week, Amy had sent me a message. "Thank you for making me feel welcome. Jackson and Emma are best friends already. I love this community." I'd smiled and sent back a heart emoji, then added, "That's what actual community looks like. Welcome to Riverside." Because Nicole had been right about one thing. We were a family at Riverside Elementary. We just had to remove the poison first to let the real relationships grow.